Fear and outrage across the United States as President Donald Trump cracks down on migrants. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. There is much happening. Many businesses in the United States closed on Monday to support a day without immigrants. More than 8,000 undocumented immigrants have been arrested since President Trump took office. How might these changes impact refugees, asylum seekers, and citizens across the nation? Well, to discuss this and more, let's bring in our guests. Joining us from Texas, Lincoln-Goldfinch is an immigration attorney. Here in Washington, D.C., Jacquie Luqman is coordinator for the Black Alliance for Peace, D.C. From Maryland, Joseph Williams is a former senior editor at U.S. News and World Report. And right here in the studio with us is attorney and Republican strategist Adolfo Franco. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Adolfo, let me start with you. As I said, there's been a crackdown on migrants in the country. It started literally on the afternoon of President Trump's inauguration. Now, over this weekend, he terminated what's known as temporary protected status. That's a designation which was used for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans. Other groups use that as well. Why did he do that? What's the goal?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that these aren't migrants. These are people who are in our country illegally. And I think that's an important distinction. I know that the news media in particular likes to use the word undocumented. That sounds like you lost your documents or something in the drawer. These are individuals who have violated our laws, who have entered our country illegally and have no right to be here. So people jump quickly about the impact on the economy and the rest of it. So that's an important distinction. President Trump is completely in favor of immigration, pro-immigration, orderly immigration, and legal immigration. What he wants to stop, and he ran on this, promises kept, is to stop illegal immigration and to deport those people who are here illegally, with the priority being those, I'll get to Venezuela, those that are here committing crimes or part of gangs and so forth, which has been the focus, of course, to date. And I'm very familiar with these programs, having worked in government for a long time. Temporary protective status is temporary, but the temporary has become permanent. It happens in South and Central America, for example, Hurricane Mitch 2 decades ago, people are still on temporary status after 20 years of a temporary hurricane problem. The problem with Venezuela particularly has been the number of gangs and people entering Venezuela to the United States that now we question whether they're legitimately here for political reasons or for other reasons than those which we suspect are nefarious activities. And that's why he has stopped this program for the
but that is a legal process that we're talking about. Temporary protected status is a legal definition.
Yes, it is.
Right.
Temporary.
So they're temporary, but how long is temporary?
Well, that's up to the government to decide.
So the government has not been doing its job, then, if it hasn't acted on these.
Yeah. Well, what's happened is this, and it's been the practice, I think, for many years. The temporary status, be it Venezuelans or others, has become permanent. It's supposed to be for a discrete purpose. Sometimes a natural disaster, sometimes other reasons that this protective status is done temporarily. But here's the question. You asked the right question. When does it end? People are outraged because temporary status has been revoked. Well, when does that expire? And of course, if you listen to advocates that are advocating for this to be open-ended, they will advocate for a very, very long runway.
Is there any kind of definition in the law that says when this ends?
No, there is no definition of law.
Okay. Let me go to Kate. Kate, Venezuelans are not the only ones affected. As I said, there are other groups. The Trump administration has also ended granting parole to Ukrainians and Afghans, as well as suspending programs for Cubans. Haitians, Nicaraguans also affected. Now, what is the implication of all of this?
It's really devastating. I mean, I reject what Adolfo said, that these are people who are illegal or have broken the law. These are people who are under parole program. They entered with parole. They might be asylum seekers. They have TPS. There has been an infrastructure collapse in their country, and they're here to make a better life for themselves and their family, to live in safety, to contribute to our economy. They want to do right by the United States. They're incredibly resilient, admirable people who are very hardworking. And the way that these policies are being rolled out and canceled is absolutely cruel, and it harms all of us. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the reality of the situation is that we are a nation that needs immigrants. Not only were we built on immigrants, we need immigrant labor on all areas of the skill spectrum, and we don't have an immigration system that reflects the needs of the economy. So people come and fill the jobs that we have, utilizing the programs that we have available, like parole, like TPS, like asylum, and then we turn around and villainize them and listen to this rhetoric where they're, called criminals and bad people when they came in the process that existed to them at the time that they came. And so why don't we instead turn to our president, turn to Congress and say, you know what? We love immigrants. We need immigrants. This is a nation of immigrants. And so expand immigration policies that allow for people, good people who don't have criminal history, to come here and fill the jobs that we have for them, and stop this ridiculous rhetoric that immigration equals bad. It's not true. It is just not true. And it's hurting us all that we're listening to this nonsense over and over and over.
Right, and Kate, just one point that I asked Adolfo about as well. It does say temporary protected status. What does that mean? I mean, is temporary in some way defined?
Well, it's about an infrastructure collapse. So essentially, we have TPS. The policy is something has occurred in another nation, and therefore we declare that the people who are in this country from that nation cannot safely return to their country. I would argue that that's still true for Venezuelans. It's still not safe for most of them to return. That's what TPS is really all about. But again, I mean, we're talking about TPS, but overall, the big question is, why aren't we solving our immigration problem? Why not?
Right. Let me go to Jacquie Luqman for that big question. Jacquie, if we look at this, it's been called human rights violation. There are political implications as well. What are your thoughts on what President Trump is doing regarding immigrants?
Well, this is actually not new. This might be new for a lot of people who have not been paying attention to U.S. immigration policy since the Clinton years, but Trump is using a legal apparatus that was put in place by Bill Clinton. So let's stop acting as if Trump is a uniquely maligned and malignant, especially evil actor in this. The legislation and the infrastructure for the mass deportations, the ending of administrative courts and turning them into deportation courts, the denial of rights of people who are applying for asylum, not even giving some people who are arrested, not even convicted, but simply arrested for minor infractions like jaywalking. Those people are immediately arrested and deported. There is no due process for them. They don't get to see a judge. That's not something that Trump started. That was something that Bill Clinton started with the passage of his Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act and the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act back in the 80s. The second was a Republican legislation that the Democrats did not fight, and Bill Clinton signed into law. And what we see today is the result of both parties relying on this very xenophobic rhetoric that is rooted in pan-European settler colonial demonization of the other, people who are in their way for what they want. Because how do people who basically built this country on land that was stolen from indigenous people and developed by the forced labor of trafficked Africans and their descendants, how do these people get to say that somebody else coming to a country they stole are illegal? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, let me go to Joseph Williams. Joseph, Jacquie makes the point that this is not unique to Donald Trump, and we've known that former President Biden also actually deported more people, and before him, President Obama, and going all the way back to President Clinton. But Joseph, defenders of these policies say it's not anything new as far as President Trump is concerned. This is what he ran on. This was his campaign. It wasn't something that he just dreamt up on the 20th of January. So he's implementing what he promised.
There's no doubt about that. And it seems that he's also constructing, I mean, the law and the groundwork was already there. So he seems to be constructing an apparatus that will even accelerate the deportation of some people that they deem unlawfully here and a threat to American order. But I think that if you pull back even further from when these laws were passed, you will also find that American business is very much in favor of inexpensive, unskilled, uneducated to a degree labor to try to keep the chickens moving through the factories and that they're at a rock bottom price at your grocery store, eggs and so forth. So it is a tacit agreement between Republicans and the big commerce and the business community that these raids are kind of show raids. You don't see ICE going into a Tyson chicken plant. You don't see them going into a hog plant or a berry farm. They're also kind of low level, 20 people here, 30 people there. We're not sweeping into places where we in fact know a lot of immigrants are. And the fear is the point, to get people to self-deport, as they talked about earlier, and to get people anxious and afraid and nervous. And that's exactly what's happening, is working according to plan.
Adolfo, there's various ways of looking at this. There is an ideological component. It is politics, after all. But if we look at it practically, and we take what Joseph just told us, immigrants are needed in this country, aren't they? I mean, today, Monday, there was a day without immigrants. Just to highlight how big a role, how important a role migrants play in the United States economy. I mean, if we take the fact that they play a role, that if you kick them out, then it's going to affect the economy. Add to that, the other thing the president wants to do is push tariffs up. That's going to push prices up. That's going to affect all Americans.
Well, it's a lot to explain here. Right?
Yeah.
This is the problem with this subject. It can go in very, very different directions.
Yeah.
First of all, let me repeat what I said at the beginning. President Trump is for immigration. He is for legal immigration. We do need immigrants. We want people to come into our country legally. The problem is, and Kate's a very good spokesperson here and very articulate, they immediately jump over the issue of illegality. These people have entered, yes, Kate, they have entered the country illegally, or many have had. I know you were talking about temporary protective status, but putting that aside, in terms of, that is temporary, by the way, and that temporary doesn't mean decades and decades. And Venezuela, just to talk about that for a second, yes, you can argue, I think you can make a credible argument, the situation in Venezuela is not anywhere near what we would call ideal to return. Yeah. But many of the people, I worked on temporary protective status for Hondurans after Hurricane Mitch in the 1990s. People were here for decades after a hurricane. People aren't displaced in Florida for decades. It became a permanent program. And anytime you move to try to end the program, remember, temporary, that it was no longer temporary, then you were cruel and terrible. It became a hoax on the other side of it. Yeah. But going back to your question on immigration, the question is this: you can't just jump to the argument of, yes, they're doing all these things and we need workers and so forth. I don't disagree with that. We are talking about people coming across the border illegally or other ways, through other ways to reach the country illegally. That is illegal immigration. The president ran on that. I don't think that the surprise in this program should be if he were not doing this. Yeah. He ran on this. 54% of the people in our countries, according to polls, support this deportation. Maybe not the guests on this program, but the majority of the people in the United States voted for that and continue to support those policies. So we are for an orderly immigration process, but not for illegal immigration. And the target still remains people who are here committing crimes.
Right. Let me go to Kate on that. Kate, Adolfo making the point here that the president supports immigration, but it's got to be legal immigration.
I hear this refrain all the time, and I see no evidence that Trump or Stephen Miller or conservative Republicans actually do support legal immigration. I have seen them do nothing about the Dreamers. On day one of Trump's second term in office, he canceled the CBP One app. 30,000 people who were in process, who had their appointments scheduled, they were going through, they were entering all their information They were doing the background check just like they are supposed to do. The refugees, the family members of people from Afghanistan who supported our military, who finally had their children or their sibling, all the way through the 2-year process, booked on a flight to come here, they get their flights canceled. The only thing we've seen is actions slashing immigration for people who are desperately attempting to do everything the right way. I work with thousands of immigrants. I can tell you, they want to do this the right way. They want safety for their family. They want a better lives for themselves. They want to contribute to this country. They think this country is incredible. And they want to come here and they want to do it the right way. And we've seen nothing coming from Congress in terms of immigration reform or expanding ways for people to legally come here and work, or to reduce the backlogs in the family-based immigration system. It takes 25 years for the sibling of a U.S. citizen to get here if they are from Mexico. People die while they're waiting their supposed turn in line. The system is absolutely broken. We haven't had immigration reform in 4 decades, and so I'm tired of hearing we support legal immigration. If you do, then do something about it.
You have to ask the right question. Do you favor illegal immigration? All the illegal immigrants that are crossing the border. What do you think about that?
I'm talking to you about the people who are doing it the
Jackie,
right
I'll get to you.
way.
Kate,
They're
go on.
doing everything that they can to get here legally, and we're cutting those options. There is zero way for someone who's fleeing persecution to get here and seek protection, even though we've offered this for 70 years.
Kate, these are economic refugees by and large, and you know it. And people coming across the border, by and large, there's millions of people. These millions of people, I know refugee law as well. These millions of people are coming into the country illegally.
Like I have. Their children are murdered. The things that these people go through.
These people are coming for jobs.
Okay, I want to move on.
Conversations with them like I do.
Right. I want to move on to the other guest. Jackie, you wanted to say something?
Yes, let me speak to this issue of illegality and the fact that people are coming, or the opinion that people are coming here illegally. That's interesting, coming from a government that interferes in the affairs of sovereign nations that these people are coming from, that create the conditions that make it untenable for them to live in their countries. People are bringing up Venezuela as if the situation, the economic and political situation in Venezuela doesn't exist because of U.S. interference and repeated attempts by the U.S. government to overthrow the democratically elected government of Venezuela. The sanctions that the U.S. government imposes on Venezuela, that has killed 40,000 Venezuelans. If we want to talk about illegality, we need to talk about the policies that come from the U.S. government, both parties, that create the conditions that people are fleeing from, that create or exacerbate this issue. And one of those pieces of legislation is also NAFTA. If you have a problem with Mexico and immigrants from there, you had better look at what NAFTA did.
Okay, there's several different shows in there. Adolfo, I will get back to you, but I want to get to Joseph Williams. Joseph Williams, you know, one of the, I guess, one of the impacts that we're seeing of what's happening right now is that the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, known as ICE, it says that so many people have been arrested in the past few days that they don't have accommodation to keep them right now. There's now talk of using the prison at Guantanamo Bay to house these migrants. What kind of message does that send?
It sends a very obvious message. I mean, the very words Guantanamo Bay strike fear in the heart of a lot of people because they know what it stands for. I mean, now, mind you, to be specific, and I'm pretty sure Adolfo would agree with this, they're not going to house people in Gitmo proper, i.e. the camps where the terrorists are, the harsh conditions there. They are looking at building up a facility that's looking more like a tent city. But that's only slightly better than that option, mainly because of what we've discussed here, the fact that a lot of the migrants waiting to be sent back to their country of origin fear for their very lives, and in part because of things that the United States has done in the past. One of the guests talked about how Bill Clinton was the author of a lot of this stuff. During the 80s, that was happening, and they were doing exactly what Trump says he is doing, which is shipping people back with criminal records. People get arrested, they get deported, even though they were born in the U.S. They go back to Central America. That's where a lot of the gangs come from, because they know no other lifestyle They know no other way of earning a living in a country that they're not familiar with, so they turn to crime. And I think that there is a very legitimate fear that people will die upon return to their country. And I do think it's shameful that neither party has taken any concrete steps to solve it. It's been a political football for a long, long time. Gitmo is the latest yard marker in that. And it's designed to strike fear, just like the ICE raids are, designed to strike fear in the hearts of everyone and let people know who's boss and that Trump is flexing and is going to do what he pleases. The law be damned in some cases.
Right, before we move on, Kate, just one legal point on this this proposal to use Guantanamo. I mean, whether it's a tent city or whether it's the prison that's already there, what are the legal implications? Because Guantanamo is beyond the jurisdiction of U.S. law, isn't it?
Yeah, it creates terrifying issues about access to counsel. I mean, how am I going to go see my clients if they're in Guantanamo? I was involved many years ago in litigation about a detention center that had been opened close to a metropolitan area. And in the discovery around that litigation, it was revealed that there was a discussion via email with officials inside the agency. Perhaps they shouldn't open this detention center because it was so close to this big city that had a lot of lawyers and advocates. And we know that they intentionally put these detention centers out in remote rural areas where it's difficult for people to reach, for the families to reach, and for the attorneys to reach. And Guantanamo would certainly achieve that end. It would be very difficult as a lawyer for me to get to my clients.
Adolfo, you know, we've been hearing for decades, literally, about the need to overhaul the United States immigration system, that there needs to be reform. You know, if we look at the raids that took place over the past few days, there was a response from the mayor of Chicago, Chicago being one of those cities that was targeted by ICE. So let's listen to what the mayor had to say.
If he was really serious about transforming our immigration system in this country, he would pass a law. There's a bipartisan law right now on the Senate side that would provide more border support, more judges to move asylum cases faster, to create pathways to citizenship. He's not doing it because he wants to stoke fear into people so that he can ultimately behave as the supreme existence, which is quite dangerous.
So does the mayor have a point there? I mean, there needs to be, Congress needs to get in on this and overhaul the system.
Well, that's true. But there's a lot the president can do in the interim, and he's doing it right now. The next time, you should run two reels. And first of all is having the mayor of Chicago listen to his constituents at City Hall and council meetings to see their reactions to the illegal immigrants that are in Chicago. And second, we should have Eric Adams, another big city mayor who has a very different view than the mayor of Chicago, a Democrat, on what's going on. So yes, comprehensive immigration reform is probably more likely, although I've said this many times and I've been wrong and right over the years, it's more likely now than ever. Why? Because the Republicans have pressed for a long time that we really can't talk about comprehensive immigration reform until we bring the border under control. I think that's going to be brought under control. Border crossings are down 93%.
Can't it both be done at the same time?
No, we need to bring border security under control first, and that's being done, and it's being done rapidly. The president will deploy federal troops to the border. Border crossings are down dramatically already in 2 weeks.
Right.
So therefore, I think that is now a possibility more than ever, because we can now move to what we all want, which is an orderly, legal immigration system. I will say this about Guantanamo, before the violins are struck out. The people that are being sent to Guantanamo, or purported to be sent to Guantanamo, are people like Tren Aragua from Nicaragua. These are violent, very violent gang members that we're talking about sending to Guantanamo. Now, I've been to Guantanamo. I'm sure some of the other guests have as well. And Joseph is absolutely right. They're going to be held in tent in other cities, not the maximum security area. This is not the dishwasher or the person at a restaurant. These are violent criminals. Venezuela has emptied its criminal gangs and has brought them to the United States. That has been also another side of the coin. People are talking about their fear. These people have been brought and promoted to leave the United States by countries that are hostile to our interests. Therefore, it is absolutely appropriate for the president to take action on this. I'm surprised one of the guests, one of the few people in America who's supporting a terrible dictator like Maduro. By the way, that election has been called fraud, not only by the United States, by most Western countries, including Latin America, including Latin America, including Latin American countries
I'll get to you, Jacquie.
and the European Union. So would you?
All right, I'll get to you, Jacquie, in a moment.
What you have seen is the president's policies are working. Colombia, Venezuela, these other countries are now willing to take back people who are here not only legally but quite violent.
Colombia straight, because Colombia sent that plane back because of the violations of international law carried out by handcuffing people and sending them back in a military plane. So Colombia went and got their people with the dignity they deserve.
But
that
Jacquie,
is what was done. Because regardless of what you feel about why people come here, you do not have to dehumanize them. But dehumanization is the point. It's not about legality or fairness.
2 hours later,
it's about
the president of Colombia reversed his position.
That's what it is. It's about dehumanization and pan-European settler colonial hegemony. That's what it is. Because honestly, if you really were concerned about immigration, you would end U.S. imperialism in other people's countries.
Well, like I said, that is...
But what is Colombia's position now on returning immigrants? It has now reversed its position.
It did.
Including with military aircraft.
Yeah, on the same day, it did. Kate, one other point I'm going to bring up, and that, you know, we hear supporters of Donald Trump and the president himself call this an invasion by migrants. Now, the president is using the military to secure the border and wants to invoke a law, believe it or not, that goes back to 1798, which allows the president to detain non-citizens in times of war. Is this the legal application of this law?
No, the Alien Invasion Act says that when we're at war with a particular country and we have enemy combatants from that country, that we can take swift and decisive action against people from that particular country. So Trump is trying to use the Alien Invasion Act against all of the immigrants who are coming to the United States. But again, I'll just return to the major issue here is that if we wanted to solve the immigration problem, we would expand immigration, we would provide ways for people to legally seek asylum across the southern border, and we wouldn't have the extreme desperation and need of people on the southern border if we had ways for them to process. What we're doing has the opposite intended effect, and it absolutely is not true that we can't allow people to apply for asylum and expand immigration at the same time. It would solve all the problems, but you know what? It wouldn't get quite so much attention and focus for certain conservative politicians if they were to do that.
Okay, Judge Williams, you get the last word on this, and we've only got 20 seconds. Is there any kind of appetite, do you sense, in Congress to fix this?
At the moment, no. Mainly because of the attitudes that Adolfo has expressed. They firmly believe that the border needs to be, quote unquote, under control before any action gets taken. However, this is an ideal situation if they in fact did want to do something, unified control of Congress, strong desire to do something, and a president who ran on immigration.
Okay, we need to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for being with us. I'm Arnold Naidu in Washington, D.C.